He was bullied for having no magic, but after making a promise with his friend, he becomes determined to do whatever it takes to become the greatest mage in history. The story begins with a boy named William Surfort as he fights a monster in a dungeon because he wants to prove that he can succeed at the Rigor and Magic Academy even though he can't use magic. He defeats the monster using his sword, but countless more appear, and he prepares to take them on, thinking he doesn't need magic to defeat them. A professor named Edward Seraphins teaches a class at the academy, and he tells William to come to the front. He asks William to use magic to start a fire, so he tries to use his wand to cast a spell, but he fails miserably, and everyone starts laughing at him. Edward silences the class, but he's surprised William can't even use basic magic, telling him he's only good at taking notes. A student named Xian shows everyone how it's done, but Edward tells him not to demonstrate his powers without permission. So he apologizes, explaining that he just wanted to help William because he couldn't complete the task. Edward freezes the fire and tells everyone that magic is everything in this world, so the students in the academy will earn respect by showing their talent for magic. He thinks those who are incapable of using magic have no place in the academy, so they should withdraw immediately. After the class, Xian asks William if he isn't embarrassed, knowing he's been going to the dungeon to defeat weak monsters. A girl named Colette comes to his rescue, and Xian wonders why she's standing up for him, so she tells him William is her friend. She mentions that he works extremely hard and is nicer than Xian, but he explains that those qualities don't make a good mage. He decides to leave because he doesn't want to waste his time around William, telling him he should just drop out. Colette tells him to ignore them, thinking something's wrong with Edward for making him a laughingstock, but he says he's okay because it's true he can't use magic. He even considers himself lucky because the incident made a cute girl worry about him. So she blushes, asking him what he wants from her, but he explains that he's just telling the truth because he has always been told he should compliment girls. So she becomes embarrassed, but she reminds herself to maintain her composure because she belongs to a noble family, even if it's just a name. She sees William staring at the sky, so she asks him if something's wrong, but he mentions that he's just admiring how beautiful the day is. We learned that a long time ago, people didn't know about the sky, and they were trapped in darkness because the world was terrorized by invaders known as the Celestial Host. But 5 wizards opposed them, and with their combined powers, they were able to defeat the Celestial Host. They cast a seal over the sky, bringing peace to the world, and the title of Magia was passed down from them ever since, but it's only given to the strongest mages. Colette wonders if the Ice Maiden is watching over them, and William imagines her sitting by her window looking out for them. In a flashback, William talks with a girl named Elferia, who tells him that the sun and moon are floating in the real sky. She thinks if they become Magia and climb to the top of the tower, they will be able to see the sunset, so they promise to climb the tower together. Elferia becomes the youngest person ever to earn the title of Magia, and she leaves for the top of the tower. But William has no talent for magic, so he's nowhere near her level, but he still works hard to fulfill his promise to her. Back in the present, we meet a professor named Werkner, who scolds William for going to the dungeon alone, so he immediately apologizes, but he still wants the credit points for killing a monster. Werkner gives him 2 points, but asks him if he still dreams about becoming a Magia, because he needs to advance to the Upper Institute before he can head up the tower. In order to advance, he needs to get a ridiculous amount of credit points from all 3 categories of writing, spellwork, and praxis. But since he can't use magic, he can never get the credits from spellwork. He explains that he already knows this, which is why he's working on praxis and going to the dungeon, but Werkner thinks it's impossible for him to advance. He doesn't want William to worry about becoming a Magia when he might even fail to graduate, telling him he needs to earn 4 credits by the end of the week to get a passing mark. He starts to panic, and he goes through his notes to find a monster worth 4 credit points. Werkner decides to help him, telling him about a monster called a Baskerville, which appeared on the 6th floor, and William hugs him, thanking him for his help. But Xian hears their conversation, and he decides to hunt the monster himself, so that William will get expelled. William reaches the 6th floor, but his companion Kiki seems worried. So he tells her everything's going to be fine. He mentions they just have to avoid the monster's flaming breath, and he's depending on her nose to guide them. We see Xian with his friends, as they also enter the 6th floor. He's about to explain his plan, but they're suddenly attacked by a powerful monster called an evil sentinel, which is worth 10 credit points. It punches one of them and sends him flying into a wall, so Shion's friend panics, and William hears him scream, so he immediately goes to find them. As he reaches them, he sees Shion struggling, trying to attack the monster with his fire magic, but it has no effect. William wonders if he should help, because Shion has always bullied him, but he suddenly remembers how Alferia used to think he was braver than anyone. So he decides to jump into battle, blocking the monster's sword before it can reach Shion. Meanwhile, Edward approaches Werkner, telling him to use his familiar to find Shion's group, because they went into the dungeon without permission. He wonders what floor they're on, so Edward reveals that they're on the 6th floor, and Werkner tells him to relax, because William is also there. William fights the monster head-on, and he manages to land a hit, but it fights on, smashing the ground. He moves around it with ridiculous speed, and he manages to land a decisive blow, as Shion watches the fight, and he can't believe he's watching the same William he's been bullying. Werkner and Edward also watch the fight, and Edward is shocked by William's strength. Werkner explains that even though William can't use magic, he possesses superhuman strength and durability, and he even has the ability to understand his enemy's strategies after seeing them once. The monster tries to kill him, but he dodges the attack and slices off its arm. It fires an energy blast, but William slashes through it and cuts the monster in half. He asks Shion if he's okay, but he's upset because he was saved by someone with no magic, and Edward is furious because he can't believe William has a power that surpasses magic. The next day, William reports to Werkner, who gives him 10 credit points, and William is happy since he won't be expelled anymore. In a flashback to 5 years earlier, we see the students talking about William, thinking he was only admitted to the academy so they could lure Alferia. But she has already become a Magia, so he's no longer needed, and they think he's about to get expelled. He goes with Werkner, and they meet the headmaster named Cauldron, who gives him a knife, and attacks him with fire spells, but he destroys all of them. She's impressed by his skills, so she allows him to continue attending at the academy. But he starts crying, wondering if he will ever be able to reach Alferia, and she thinks it might be possible if he keeps working hard. We return to the present, as Werkner gives a lecture, and he explains the concept of ascending the tower, saying it means advancing to the upper institute to become one of the Magia at the top floor. To ascend the tower, the mages can create a new type of magic, or earn 7,200 credits from the academy. Werkner explains that most of the students use credits to advance, but he yells at them because everyone in the class is on the verge of failing. After the class, Colette joins William, knowing he has earned every credit in writing, but Werkner is still hard on him, and he tells her it's because he failed spell work. He thinks Werkner is a great teacher since he's giving them supplementary lessons, saying other professors don't even care if they fail. They run into Shion, as his friends tell everyone that he defeated an evil sentinel, but he knows he didn't do it. He sees William, and he grabs him, wondering why he's so powerful, despite having no talent for magic, but Colette interferes, and he decides to leave him alone. Meanwhile, Edward goes to Cauldron, telling her to expel William, but she doesn't think it would be fair, since he's in his last year. Edward thinks there's no place in the academy for someone who can't use magic, so she shows him William's records, and explains that he's exceptional in everything except for magic. So even if he can't become a Magia, there are other options available for him. She explains that the academy needs to produce scholars for the fated day, but Edward thinks the problem is that William doesn't want to become a scholar, because he's planning to become a Magia. So she tells Edward to test him, and after seeing how he performs, Edward can decide what to do with him. William apologizes to Colette, because he needs to bring her with him to open his locker, but as she opens it, she sees his sword, and he mentions that he doesn't have the permission to carry it around the campus. They head to the study hall, where William starts reading about dwarves, and Colette thinks he doesn't have to work so hard, because he's already good at writing. But he knows that if he loses even 1 credit point, he won't be able to ascend the tower, and he wants to learn about the dwarves, saying he can relate to them, because they never gave up no matter the situation. Colette sees William's white hair, and thinks it's because he works too hard. She wants to pull it out, but they're suddenly interrupted by Edward, who tells William to come to the spell hall alone. As they reach the hall, Edward explains that he's going to give William a supplementary lesson, because he always fails the spellwork class. Edward starts using dark magic, telling William he needs to land a hit to pass the test, and Edward explains that if he succeeds, he will receive 5 credit points for his spellwork class, but he will have to leave the academy if he fails. Wertner goes to Cauldron, who shows him the fight between Edward and William, so he's shocked, wondering what's going on. But she forbids him from stopping them, and explains that since she heard what he had to say in favor of William, she must also recognize Edward's concerns equally. She reveals that she allowed him to make the decision of William's future in the academy, but Wertner thinks it's too cruel, because Edward is the closest person to becoming a Magia, and even though he was defeated, he still managed to reach the top of the tower. He tries to hit William with his dark magic, and William dodges the attacks, but he's shocked by how powerful it is, knowing Edward only used a low-level spell. He goes on the offensive, trying to land a kick, but Edward stops him with a barrier, thinking he's hopeless. Edward hits William with his black flames, and William is shocked by how quickly he's using his spells, because he's casting them without incantations. He tells William that he's only going to use his black flames to attack, and make a shield to protect himself, saying he will make him feel despair just by using 2 spells. He starts overlapping his spells, and William tries to get out of the way, but he still gets hit, realizing he can't beat Edward, but he thinks he might have been able to put up a fight if he had his sword. Meanwhile, Colette goes to the locker room, and she thinks Edward might be torturing William. Kiki suddenly arrives, and Colette realizes she's injured, but she just claws at William's locker. We return to the fight, as Edward talks about the Battle of Goronzo, where the dwarves prepared an army of 10,000 soldiers, but it only took 1 mage to defeat them. He steps on William's head, telling him to give up on his dreams, because a sword can never become as strong as a wand, but he still wants to become a Magia. Edward wonders what's driving him so hard to achieve an impossible goal, so he mentions that he wants to be with the person he loves. He thinks William is an idiot, but he explains that even if his reason sounds ridiculous to him, he still won't give up. Colette suddenly arrives, giving him his sword, and Edward attacks with his black flames, but is surprised when William slashes through it. He prepares to shoot a barrage of his black flames once again, and William worries about getting hit. But he charges in, and as he dodges the attack, he thinks about how in the Battle of Goronzo, there was one dwarf who never gave up, and managed to land a hit on the mage. William jumps up to the ceiling, and he rushes at Edward with incredible speed, shattering his barrier, and he manages to land a hit. So Edward leaves, giving William the 5 credit points as promised, and Cauldron is impressed that he was able to succeed. William goes around the city to distribute newspapers, and he trips on the stairs, but he manages to catch all of the newspapers except one. As he goes to pick it up, he sees the news that Alferia has invented a new magic, making her the first person to come up with 12 original spells. He reads on, realizing that the Upper Institute has issued an order to the Academy, and the client is Alferia herself. William goes to his dorm, and asks his roommate Rosti if he can prepare a magic item for him. He wonders why William is in such a rush, and he mentions that the order came from Alferia, so he needs to get there quickly. He explains that he doesn't have classes today, so he's going to prioritize completing the order, and Rosti wonders if the job is difficult. So William reveals he just needs to collect some Frostwalker cores, saying Alferia needs magic catalysts, and all students who help her will be compensated. He explains that he's going to the 4th floor, which is why he needs Rosti's magic items, and he gives William what he needs. Before he can leave, Rosti gives him a piece of bread, telling him to take care of himself. A large number of students turn up in the dungeon, but William already expected it, because it was an order from Alferia. He's about to start hunting, when he's startled because of Xian's attack. Everyone praises him, but he isn't satisfied, as he remembers how amazing William was when he fought the evil sentinel. But William is impressed by Xian, and he decides to go deeper into the dungeon, thinking Xian might defeat all the monsters in the area. He comes across a girl named Iris, who's about to be attacked by 3 monsters, but he comes to her rescue, slicing them in half. She's shocked that he saved her with a sword, instead of using magic, and she thanks him for protecting her. Meanwhile, Wertner tells the students that creating new magic is such a great achievement that it guarantees one's advancement in the tower. He mentions that magic is named after the person who invents it, so if they're able to create a new one, their names will forever be remembered in history, but the students know it isn't easy to invent magic. One of them wonders how strong Alferia is, and Wertner mentions that she's one of the most powerful mages in history. Colette thinks Alferia is amazing, and her friend tells her she's jealous that Alferia will steal William from her, so she becomes embarrassed. In the dungeon, William tells Iris who he is, and he wonders if she feels any hatred toward him since he can't use magic. But she tells him she has no reason to hate him, reminding him that he just saved her life. He asks her if she's also there due to Alferia's order, and she explains that she wants to be of help to Amagia, because she also